It is a sad, somber day here inside the SpringBlake Studios for two reasons. The first being, we've lost our first episode. Episode 20, which was recorded Monday morning. An episode I spent over 24 hours trying to save. An episode in which we took blame for Florida Gators losing their third straight game of the season, where we credited Miami, where we told you, I told you so, in Oklahoma, Auburn, and in, I can't even remember what other games we had. That episode vanished. Corrupted file, unable to upload both video and audio. This is episode 21 that you're listening to. Episode 20, gone in the wind. Incredibly heartbreaking. But that is not all that has us sad here at the SpringBlake College Football Show. Welcome in to the first of our two episodes this week. It is Wednesday, September 24th. I'm going to bury the lead for a little bit. Welcome into the show. I should not just jump into the sad state of affairs. I should let you all know what this is, why you are here. If this is your first time tuning into the SpringBlake College Football Show, first of all, thank you. This is your favorite ball knower's favorite ball knowing show. If I'm SpringBlake, you know that this is a college football show. If you are watching on YouTube, thank you for doing so. See that little like button down just below where this video ends? Hit like on that. Just hover over it, click it. Offer any support that you can for this show. Go to the subscribe button. Click on that. Subscribe to this channel. Support this show. If you're listening, Spotify, Apple, wherever you may get your podcast, leave a 5-star review. Subscribe to the channel there. Head over to my socials at Twitter and TikTok. That is at SpringBlake CFB. Show some love there as well, too. It is stuff from this show, stuff that goes beyond this show. Any support that you guys have given to me through the first 20 episodes of this show, I have greatly appreciated, and it just gets me more excited to keep doing this thing as we move further through our first college football season here. If you are returning, whether it's your 10th, 15th, I guess technically 20th, even though we're on episode 21, thank you for coming back. Make sure that you've done all those things already, that you're following the socials, that you're subscribed to the channels, that you've left the 5-star reviews, that you're liking the videos. Any support that you guys give me, I try to give back tenfold in terms of content for you all. So, schedule has been all over the place for this show, and for a few different reasons. We were regularly a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Then life/work got in the way. We tried Monday, Thursday for a little bit. We were trying to do Monday, Thursday for this week. And then Tuesday came around, and we still hadn't put out Monday because it was a corrupted file. Now we're here on Wednesday with our first episode of the week. We are going to do Wednesday, Friday. We're going to still get 2 shows in. We have a lot to cover on today's episode. We're not going to do the recap show that was supposed to be Monday. I spent an hour in front of this microphone trying to do all of that. Spent many hours trying to get it uploaded. It didn't work. We're going to move on and just focus on week 5. All that said, we've got some major disappointing news to discuss. We're going to preview the 2 biggest games of the week, the 2 biggest games of the season we've had thus far. And we're also going to give out an updated SpringBlake Sweet 16 as we gear toward week 5. So, mostly with our preview shows, we like to do things, just game previews, polls, best bets, all that stuff. We're going to start off today's show a little bit different than we do most because we here at the SpringBlake College Football Show had our hearts and our wallets ripped out of our chests Tuesday afternoon. When it was announced that Oklahoma quarterback John Mateer was going to undergo surgery today that this show is coming out on the thumb of his throwing arm, after injuring it in the first quarter of their game against Auburn this past weekend, and he is set to miss at least the next month of football. As I mentioned, that game was accounted for. That injury happened in the first quarter of their game against Auburn, a game in which they won 24-17, a game in which he accounted for over 99% of the team's total offense. And we're going to talk about that in a second when we talk about Oklahoma moving forward and how they figured this out. That right there, that number, John Mateer accounting for over 99% of the team's total offense is something that we're gonna really dig into and see, okay, well, is that best for Oklahoma? Is there a spin zone for this where we can move past and feel better about Oklahoma a month from now than we do at this very moment? So obviously this sucks for so many reasons. Mateer and Oklahoma were one of the coolest stories in the sport thus far. Getting an offensive coordinator and quarterback to leave the lower levels of competition and move up to the SEC and sure, blow by some of the easier opponents on the schedule, but then to look the part against Michigan, to look the part against Auburn, it was rejuvenating everything down in Norman, Oklahoma as they headed toward what was going to be a very special season. And then it's also awesome because think of all the quarterbacks that we have hyped up this season. DJ Lagway, massive disappointment. Arch Manning through the first month of the regular season, massive disappointment. Guys like Sam Leavitt out in Arizona State, couple of shaky games. Cade Klubnik, oh my God, what has happened to that guy? Garrett Nussmeier even, to a certain extent, even though he might be playing through some type of injury. Mateer was one of the few guys that we poured a lot of hype into this past offseason, and he was one of the very few to live up to those expectations. Now, selfishly, it sucks for me too. Oklahoma was one of my picks to make the college football playoffs. John Mateer was my pick to win the Heisman. We have a $50 future sitting there for $12.50 that I just have to stare at and be sad about for the rest of the regular season. Potentially. We'll get to that in a second. So selfishly, it sucks. It sucks for the story in the sport, and it sucks for Oklahoma because, this was such a make or break season for Brent Venables, and it couldn't have started off better. And it's not over. Mateer is set to come back, but for the next month, they will be turning to Michael Hawkins Jr., who started 4 games for the Sooners last year. He appeared across 7 games, completed 63% of his passes, 783 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks, and about 200 on the ground because he is a dual threat quarterback. Now, this time around, the Sooners are healthier at the wide receiver position. Deion Burks has emerged as the true star he was destined to be. The offensive line is playing better than the one that Hawkins had to work with last season. And Ben Arbuckle is a massive upgrade still at the play caller role for them compared to what Oklahoma had to deal with last year. That being said, it's still a big ask for this kid to come back in and just, let's keep things humming right around. Let's just make sure that you're doing just what John Mateer did, carrying the entire burden for this Oklahoma offense. Because we know the defense is good. We know they're well coached. We know that there are pieces of this offense that are really talented. It's a tough thing to ask out of Hawkins. Now, the schedule isn't the worst thing in the world. You think about a month-long timeline. They do have their bye week. It's really nice to have that eat away one of the weeks that Mateer is set to miss. And it's also just as nice to have Kent State coming into town the following weekend. So the first half of this, you're feeling, all right. We got through half of it, and we're still going to be undefeated. Now, we are going to head into the Red River shootout. Massive week against Texas. This game before the season, it was Arch, and it was Mateer, and it was like, oh my God, what a quarterback story. A little bit different now with Hawkins and how Arch has struggled. And then you also have a road trip to South Carolina. So, it's not great. You definitely open yourself up to the ability to earn 2 losses, and then you need Mateer to come back and to be perfect to make sure that you guarantee yourself a spot in the college football playoffs. But can you give me a 1-1 split through those games? If you can do that, I can give you a path where Oklahoma is just fine heading into the end of the regular season and into the college football playoffs. The last thing that I'll say about the Oklahoma situation, there has not been a team in this sport more reliant on its quarterback than John Mateer. So is there a chance that amidst all this heartbreak and this unfortunate situation, that it can turn into a positive a month from now? Now, obviously, you do not want to be faced with this situation whatsoever. But is there any chance that Oklahoma is now forced to figure out the missing pieces of this offense in his absence? Something that could even further elevate the Sooners when Mateer is able to come back? Oklahoma has flat out abandoned the run game all season. Blaylock is the leading tailback. He has 180 yards on the season, which is 10 fewer than Mateer has this year. Everyone else in that running back room is 45 yards or lower on the season. This is supposed to be a really deep running back room. Can they find something in the next few weeks to where they are staying competitive with a balanced offense, to where John Mateer can come back and he's got run support, where he doesn't need to account for over 99% of a team's total offense on any given week? There are going to be guys that step up in a big way for Oklahoma while Mateer is out. Now, I'm not saying they're going to go scorched earth and they're going to rip off 3 straight wins without him, and they're going to go win against Texas, and they'll go into South Carolina and steal that game there. Certainly possible, because the team is really talented. But all I'm asking out of Oklahoma in this next month is, can you find something in the ground game? Can you find some more competency outside of Deion Burks at the receiver position? Because they have dudes. They had one step up in the game against Auburn. Can you find a way where a month from now, when your star quarterback is set to return, that this offense is in a better position overall than when he left it this past weekend? That's my ask of Oklahoma over the next month. And it can be anybody. It can be Blaylock. He can just turn into no, you can force feed me this football and I'm going to run between the tackles. Could it be Jaden Ott? Jaden Ott didn't register a carry against Auburn. He has been an afterthought since transferring over from Cal. Does this situation force the Sooners to try and okay, well, let's start giving this guy the ball more? Can he be the guy that carries the load while Mateer is out? There's going to be someone that steps up. There's no way that Oklahoma is just going to fall off the face of the earth over the next month of the season. They're too good of a team defensively, well-coached, play caller, offensive playmakers. There's enough there. My hope is that this ends up being a net positive, where Mateer can come back, he's feeling 100% or close to it a month from now, and he's got run support, and he's got a better wide receiver room, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. Oklahoma is not just a playoff threat. No, they're a threat to go deep into the postseason. That's what I'm asking them to find out over the next month. So, obviously, just the worst situation. I couldn't believe it. I got the text because, we placed 3 Heisman futures. We placed DJ Lagway, dead upon arrival. We placed Jeremiah Love, dead upon arrival after his first game against Miami. And he's a good running back, but he's not winning the Heisman this year. And I was like, hey, you know what? We hit Mateer. Mateer looks great. Let's end the season right now. I got that notification he was set for surgery, and I just sunk into my chair. I said, fuck. It's terrible. It's terrible. Anywho, so that's not usually, we usually don't have that much news stuff to break down, but that's obviously something that changes the landscape of this sport. So let's transition now into one of the many massive game previews we're going to do this week. Now, we're just going to touch on the 2 big ones on this Wednesday show. We're obviously going to preview Georgia, Alabama in a little bit. We're going to start things off with Penn State, Oregon. Let's just rip the lid right off, because we've got the Big Ten title game rematch from last season. Oregon Ducks heading to the East Coast to take on the Penn State Nittany Lions in what is going to be an awesome game in an awesome environment. It's great that Penn State gets their night game whiteout in a big-time matchup. Everything is just setting us up for a fantastic game here between these two teams. Now, the stories of the season for both of these programs couldn't have been more different through the first month. For Oregon, it has just been utter domination on the football field with no regard for human life. Montana State, Oklahoma State, Northwestern, Oregon State, outscoring them by a combined 203 points to just 37. It has been foot on the gas, driving 95 miles down the highway like your Kirby Smart's players. Dante Moore has looked more than comfortable as the team's starting quarterback in his first month there, working with Will Stein, the talented offensive coordinator, completing 75% of his passes, almost at 1,000 yards already, 11 touchdowns to just 1 interception. Out wide, DeCorian Moore has looked the part of a 5-star true freshman, 12 grabs, 207 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So, there's been parts of Oregon that haven't looked great at times, run defense primarily. Everything else has just been like, holy shit, man. And it's so interesting because last season, they were the team that was slow to start the year. They barely get by, I believe, Idaho. Boise State took them to the wire. It was a slow roller. It's been the exact opposite this season. Now for Penn State's done the Oregon model. Now they haven't come close to losing their games, but they've just been easing into things to start this season. People have been trying to call out the Penn State offense for looking sloppy at times or disjointed or not as potent and explosive as you would think they'd be. But when I look at what Penn State's doing, I think they're just not really opening up everything just yet. And even then, without opening up the playbook, without showing everybody, film to study for, they've gone past Nevada, FIU, and Villanova by a combined score of 132-17. So for a team that just didn't want to unload the clip through the first 3 weeks, it's not like they were close to any upsets. They've been blowing past lower level competition as they should, getting through their inferior opponents because you've got this granddaddy of a matchup 1 month into the season, and this is what everything has been building for. And we'll talk about that in a second. The infusion of the wide receiver position has been the important thing to watch at Penn State. They obviously go heavy in the transfer portal. Trevor Pena, Kyron Ware-Hudson have been the two guys to really take charge through the first few weeks. Each have 150 or more receiving yards on the season. Devontae Ross, meanwhile, I believe he's the transfer from Troy. Pena, Syracuse. Hudson, USC. I believe Ross is the Troy guy. He's been kind of the vertical threat, taking the top off the defense, averaging 15.5 yards per reception. Now, that's great to do against the G5s and the FCSs of the world. You are going to go up against one of the better secondaries in college football. So how will it look? We've spent all offseason saying we just need to get Drew Aller wide receivers, and then he can be the quarterback he's destined to be. You got the receivers now, and you look good against lesser competition. This is it. And that's the matchup to watch in this game. I think most people want to point to the Penn State run game. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, a good offensive line for Penn State going up against an Oregon run defense that has been shaky. It's been the one weak point of Oregon so far, their inability to stop the run. That could very well be the biggest factor in deciding this outcome. However, when these two teams faced in the Big Ten title game, Penn State ran the football for 300 yards, and they still couldn't win the game. That's why I'm looking at you, Mr. Drew Aller. This has to be your masterpiece. This has to be your arrival. This has to be what everyone wants to believe you to be or what the doubters don't want you to be. This has to be your game. Because last year, when you played against Power 4 teams that made the college football playoffs or teams that you played in the college football playoffs, you did not look good. 55% completion rate, 158 yards per game, 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That was how you faced, I think it was against Oregon, against Ohio State, SMU, and Notre Dame. It was those 4 games. Those were your numbers. Completed 55% of your passes, just 158 yards per game, 3 touchdowns, 4 picks. Penn State has done everything to build up Drew Aller these last couple of years. 2 off seasons ago, it was bringing in Andy Kotelnicki, one of the best play callers in this game. I cannot wait to see how they call this game against Oregon. So you already bring him in, and then you add 3 very talented wide receivers in the transfer portal, like we mentioned this past offseason, in Trevor Pena, Kyron Hudson, Devontae Ross. I knew I was going to get it at some point. You bring in Trevor Pena, Kyron Hudson, Devontae Ross. So much investment into making life easy for you. You already had the great run game. You already had the offensive line. We want to elevate you as a passer. So we're going to bring in a really great offensive coordinator, one of the best play designers in the sport, and then we're also going to give you 3 really talented wide receivers. This is your game. You have to show up here. The Ducks have another another talented secondary, but they also at the same time haven't had to match up with a quarterback like you or a wide receiver room like you this season. Like I said, it's been Montana State, Oregon State, Northwestern, and Oklahoma State. That's not Penn State's offense right there. So this is going to be a test for them. This is going to be a little bit of a learning curve. I'm not saying that you have to abandon the run game in this and chuck the ball down the field 55 times, but when it's time for Drew Aller to deliver, you need to deliver. This is it. This is the moment. This is what your career has been building up for. And that's because, when we talk about the numbers that stick out in this game, James Franklin is still 4-20, nice, against top 10 teams as the head coach of Penn State. And how about this number from last year's Big Ten title game? The Nittany Lions had 518 yards of total offense, the most Oregon allowed all season, yet they never led in the game for a second. This is just, it's almost like empty calories at Penn State. I feel so good about them every week, every game, every season we head into. But numbers like that, where you can put up 500 yards on a team and never lead once, it's empty calories. So we all know that about Penn State and James Franklin. Meanwhile, the Ducks, they're just 11-5 against the spread in road games versus ranked opponents dating back to 2014. Now, however, Dan Lanning is just 2-4 against top 10 teams, but both of those wins came last season against Ohio State and Penn State. So he started 0-4 against the top 10. Oregon started to get things rolling a bit, and he picked up 2 massive top 10 victories last year within the Big Ten Conference. So those are the numbers that really stick out for this game. Let's land the plane on it. Penn State, 3.5-point favorites. The over-under is 52.5. It's as simple as this. Penn State cannot lose this game. They cannot lose this football game. You are what I believe to be the most talented roster in the sport. You have the experience edge at just about every major position in this game. You also get a raucous home environment, getting to play your long-awaited whiteout game against a big-time opponent at night in Happy Valley. You're also getting a young team. As I mentioned, you've got the experience edge. You have a young team traveling all the way across the country for their first true road environment, tough crowd of the season. You have also been building the last few years for this 2025 season. You got so many key players to come back and put all the chips in to get over the hump, to get to a national title, to get through the regular season, to win the Big Ten. You cannot lose this game. And because of that, I think the Penn State offense is going to open up unlike anything we've seen through the first month of the regular season. I think they refuse to let up, push the pedal to the max for 60 minutes, and I think they are going to breeze past the Ducks in what I think will be a really good learning experience for a young Dan Lanning team to learn 5 weeks into the season. This team isn't going anywhere. Oregon's going to still be within the Big Ten title conversation, within the playoff conversation by the end of the regular season. But they're a young team right now, and I think this will be a really good learning experience for them. Give me Penn State and Penn State big. I'm going final score 38-17. Statement win of James Franklin's career, and the first moment where we all just wake up and realize that Penn State is who we think they're going to be this season. Give me Penn State. Give me them big. It's going to be a rout. It's going to be a raucous environment. You're going to have a young Oregon team that struggles to get up for the big moment. They'll learn from their lumps. They'll be great by the end of the regular season. This game here, it's all about Penn State. So that is what I think about that massive matchup between my number 1 and number 4 rated teams in the country. Not to be outdone by that matchup, we've got a rematch from one of the games of the 2024 season happening at the very same time, and my current 2 and 5th, 2nd and 5th ranked teams in the country happening down in Athens. It's Bama versus Georgia, baby. What a massive game. What a massive game and week for your boy. We didn't even get the chance to talk about this yet. Let's pump the brakes on the game preview. My top two teams in the country heading into the season, it was Penn State number 1. It was Alabama number 2. The brand has so much riding on this week. So much. We'll get to the prediction in a second. Let's preview the game. Bama at Georgia. The stories of the season. For Alabama, it's all about redemption. Don't need to get too tricky about it or cute. It's redemption in Tuscaloosa. No team was more embarrassed last season than the Crimson Tide, losing unranked games to Oklahoma, Vandy, Michigan in the bowl game in the first year without Nick Saban. And then, after a whole offseason of hype and building up and saying that won't happen again, they got flat out embarrassed again. Week 1, losing to Florida State as 14-point favorites on the road. The last 3 weeks for Alabama have been super promising. The offense has looked so alive. The passing attack is terrific. The wide receiver room looks to be like the talent we came and expected it to be, where it's one of the best three deep rooms in the country. The defense looks more than ready. That being said, they haven't played anybody yet. This is the first true test since the lowest points of the program just less than a month ago. You're going to be entering a really tough road environment. Can you avoid the same mistakes that have plagued you since Kalen DeBoer took over? Can you have below 8 penalties? Please. Can you get off the field on third down? Can you avoid the late hits or the false starts or just everything that you can control that sets you back? That's what hurt him all last season. That's what hurt him against Florida State. Can you go into a really tough environment and show that you have learned from these mistakes? Can you keep the turnover margin even or maybe even win it? How they choose to balance this offense is so interesting to me. And the key part in how Alabama can emerge from Athens victorious on Saturday. Huge return for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Jam Miller is set to make his season debut this weekend after a broken collarbone in the team's scrimmage this past August halted what was an awesome offseason for Alabama's RB1. He was the lead back. There was no denying he was the best guy in that running back room. He was going to bring balance to this offense, and his absence, they haven't found anything. There still hasn't been a great run game coming from the Alabama Crimson Tide. My question is, he's been out. He's ready to return. At what percentage are you getting Jam Miller? Is this where he's back and he's the feature tailback and you're able to give him the rock 18 to 20 times and all of a sudden you're like, oh, see, there's the offense we thought Alabama was going to have because they have their feature back? Or is Alabama a little worried that Jam's at like 75, 80%? Where like we could try and force the rock to him, but maybe he won't play at his best. Or maybe we risk him getting banged up again. Do they even want to try that? Are they too worried that a couple of quick 3-and-outs will put them in a 10-plus point deficit and all of a sudden they have no choice but abandon the run? Very interested to see how Ryan Grubb calls this. And we'll know early on. If they are toting the rock in between the tackles with Jam Miller early in the first couple of drives, then that shows me they have all the confidence in the world that he's back at 100%. If they're pass happy in the first few drives, I'll be a little bit worried about them being able to sustain a balanced and competitive offense. So that has been the stories to watch for with Alabama this year. For Georgia, look, man, I have them as my number 2 rated team in the country. That being said, they've been trying to get a really inexperienced team up to speed quickly. This is one of the more inexperienced teams that Kirby Smart has ever put on a football field. And because of that, there are a ton of learning curves to get over and certain things that you don't come to expect from Kirby Smart-led defenses. 62nd in pressure rate, They're allowing 5.7 yards per play, which is 78th in the country, and they're allowing 250 passing yards per game, which is 96th in the country. Now, a lot of that comes from the Tennessee game, but it wasn't like they were just lights out the first few weeks either. Now, Georgia's still been really strong against the run, but this Alabama passing game has really found a groove the last few weeks. And I could definitely see the Georgia secondary being stressed out, much like it looked against Tennessee early on in that game as well. So Georgia has been incredibly impressive to me. But I wonder if still early on in the season, I just don't know if they're ready for like that statement win where they win 13-10. If it was week 10, 11 when they're facing Alabama and they're fully up to speed and they've learned the ins and outs of this defense and there's just so much more continuity than you're getting at this point in the year, I could see the just flat out shut the gates, lock the damn gates, and Alabama's held to 13. I'm very curious to see if they're at that point of the season yet, because I don't believe they are, and I believe that Tennessee game is pretty indicative of that. So we've got two matchups to watch in this game. The first one is who wins the battle of the bad up front. And by that I mean the Georgia defensive line and the Alabama offensive line. These two groups have been pretty underwhelming, but in different areas. You know, Georgia's doing fine against the run, as I said. The sack rate is just 1.72%, which is 125th in the country. They are not getting to the quarterback. Alabama, meanwhile, is doing a good job of keeping the quarterback upright, but running at just 123 yards per game, which is 87th in the country. So you're getting strength against weakness and strength against weakness. Which one of those is going to impose their will more? You know, is Alabama just going to be able to keep their quarterback upright for the entire game and he's just chucking the ball around the field like we've seen in the last few weeks? Or is the Georgia defense going to stand out more in their ability to stop the run in Jam Miller's return? That, to me, positionally and talent-wise, is the one thing I'm looking for. And the second battle, and this might be more important, we've already hinted at it, who is going to win the maturity battle? Now, I'll tell you, I give the early and easy edge to Georgia. They're fourth in the country in penalties. Alabama, down in the 90s. It's been an issue for over a year now. What has Alabama learned in the last few weeks? Has the gut check moment actually been the gut check moment? Or will this team still play undisciplined football against teams that will be more than happy to take advantage of that? Wisconsin can't take advantage of you if you're an undisciplined team because you still have such a talent discrepancy against them. Georgia will be a team that can pounce on that. So that's the other battle I'm trying to see. Has Alabama matured over the last few weeks to where they know they can't play undisciplined football if they want to go into Athens and beat the Dogs? The numbers that stick out in this: Georgia riding a 33-game home win streak that dates all the way back to 2019. There has been no team more impressive at home. I think the next longest streak is Washington, sitting somewhere in the 20s. Like, Georgia's run in Athens has been unbelievable under Kirby Smart. And for Alabama, we like to pick on DeBoer for his losses to opponents outside the top 25, but he is still 6-1 against top 10 teams as a head coach. That dates back to Washington, Alabama last year where he picked up the victory over Georgia. He usually does get up for the big games better than he gets up for those lower level ones. And then you also have to talk about the Tide historically, especially recently, have had Georgia's number. Won 9 of the 10 last games against the Bulldogs, including the last 3 as an underdog, of which they are this week. And they're also heading to Athens for the first time since 2015, which is a weird one to kind of wrap your head around, because you're talking about how Alabama has owned Georgia, and it's like, well, how can that be? Because Georgia's been unbelievable at home. They haven't gone there. This is the first trip to Athens since 2015. I got a bonus number for you. We'll pop on the little analytics glasses because we've ditched that the last few weeks because I forgot they were down there. 7 of the last 13 battles between these teams have been upsets. So almost half the time, the underdog has pulled off the upset in this game. Will that happen this weekend? Let's discuss. So Georgia, just 2.5-point favorites. The over-under, just like Penn State, Oregon, set at 52.5. I believe that Georgia wants to make this game ugly. That's how they best have won over the last few years. Like I mentioned, when they go up against Texas last year, and Texas has this high-octane offense, it was a 13-10 game. I believe that was the final. They like to win games ugly, which is a total reverse of how they played that game against Tennessee. They can go and win those shootouts as they showed to us. I don't think Kirby Smart prefers it to be that way. I think he wants to be in a game where he knows he can outsmart the other coach, just a couple of different plays making the difference. If Alabama is getting called for the false starts, the holding penalties, dumb late hits on defense, everything plays right into Kirby Smart's hands, and I think they'll be able to pull out this win. But I also have thought in the offseason, in fall camp, through the first month of the season, that despite the sloppy play or the lack of consistent effort, the talent on this Alabama team is greater than just about every roster in the country. And I think this is the game where they remind everyone of it. I am predicting that the Alabama passing game will look as potent as it ever has these last few weeks and stress out the Georgia secondary even worse than Tennessee had just a couple weeks ago. I believe the depth at the wide receiver position will stress out more than Tennessee just taking their shots down the field. I also believe that the reintegration of Jam Miller at the running back position will further rejuvenate this offense to a point where it's not just trying to hit explosive plays. They'll be able to sustain long, balanced drives and keep the Georgia offense on the sidelines. I also believe that the talent on this Alabama defense will halt most of the Dogs' strong but unproven parts of its personnel. I still think they're a little weak on the offensive line. I still don't trust the running game fully outside of sheer volume. I am predicting that the Bulldogs' 33 home game win streak comes to an end this Saturday, and that the Alabama Crimson Tide will win by a final score of 28-17, and this being the kickstart to Alabama's resurgence in this sport. Give me the Tide by 11 points. Boom. If you know me, you know that I was going to go this way. You knew I was going to go Penn State. You knew I was going to go Alabama. If you're a long-time listener, by long time, it's just the last 2 months, you know how highly I think of both of these teams. And both of them are receiving so much doubt this week. And everything that I have learned in this sport, I say it every week, and it comes to show you're never as high as your highs, you're never as low as your lows. That's why I thought Auburn was going to keep things close with Oklahoma. It was why I thought Texas A&M was going to be able to upset Notre Dame. Just when you think teams are starting to feel a certain type of way, that's when things cross. And I still believe in the talent on both of those teams. I think they're going to go and get massive season-defining wins this Saturday. So, that is what I think of the two biggest games of the week. We're going to do one more thing here to close out the show. Because the last episode was not able to be published, I just tweeted out the updated SpringBlake Sweet 16. And for those that maybe are here for the first time, the SpringBlake Sweet 16 is my top 16 power ratings, my top 16 rated teams in the country. It does not reflect resumes or quality wins. It takes in a more predictive model where it says, if I put these two teams on a neutral field, who do I think would be favored? Now, we're going to update this week. We're going to put out our second week 5 poll because a few things have changed. John Mateer is out for the next month of the season. That reflects massively. They're a team that I had within my top 10. We had to make some adjustments. We're going to run through really quick. We're going to go 16-1 this week. No reason why. I just want to talk about some of the changes and the more exciting things in the bottom half. My top half stayed relatively the same. At 16, first time in since I believe the preseason, we have Indiana. We didn't get the chance to talk Indiana, Illinois because the episode was deleted. I told everybody at the beginning of this season that the 2025 version of Indiana was Indiana. They upgraded the offensive line, their defensive line was more deep, and they made a massive upgrade at the quarterback position. Fernando Mendoza has been terrific and tore apart Illinois this past week. Indiana is a top 16 team in the country. I've got them at 16. 15. This is where I moved Oklahoma down to. They have slid down 8 spots without Mateer. And it's tough to not bump them any further. They probably, warrant that much of a drop, probably something a little bit further. I still think you have one of the best front sevens in the sport, a secondary that's getting better, but still, opens up to some deep shots from here, time to time. I think you've got a really talented wide receiver, a decent offensive line, and a really good play caller. I think Oklahoma is going to lose a game without John Mateer. They might lose 2. They're at least going to lose a game. I still think the roster talent, even without Mateer, resembles a top 15 team in the sport. So I've got Oklahoma down 8 spots to number 15. My second newest entrant into the SpringBlake poll is Ole Miss. They're at number 14. Can't wait to preview their game against LSU on Friday's episode. USC and Michigan move up 2 spots. So I've got the Trojans up from 15 to 13. They got past Michigan State. Michigan State backdoored them, I believe, with a couple minutes left. USC, really big game against Illinois, something else. We're going to preview this upcoming show on Friday. Michigan up 2 spots. Quality win over Nebraska. They've looked good. They've looked good in the rebound since their loss to Oklahoma. I think they've gone and really opened up their offense a tad. So Michigan up to number 12. LSU is still staying put at number 11 for me. LSU is a really interesting story because the further we get through this season, the less I feel good about what we saw from them. It was like, oh, wow, really impressive win against Clemson. Well, Clemson just got dog-walked by Syracuse and has lost 3 games on the season now. Hey, they hung on and beat Florida. Yeah, they beat Florida. They won the turnover margin by 4, and Florida looks like a lost team that's quitting through the first month of the season. Still a really great defense. Huge game against Ole Miss. Again, a third game we'll preview on Friday. I've got LSU at number 11. Texas A&M is up 2 spots, my number 10 team in the country. They had a bye week. They bump up because some teams have taken a little bit of a dip. But Texas A&M, number 10 in the country. Notre Dame is staying put at number 9. It's weird because Notre Dame was in a situation where they lose to Miami by 3, they lose to Texas A&M by 1, and I was like, I still feel pretty good about those results. I kind of felt worse about seeing Purdue put up 26-ish points on them this past week. The offense looked great, but we definitely need to see a little bit more out of the defensive group. And hey, they have a tough battle against Taylen Green and Arkansas this upcoming weekend. But Notre Dame's still at 9. Tennessee is up 2 spots to number 8. This was the one that kind of shocked me the most, having Tennessee up this high. But again, I left that Georgia game feeling really good about the Vols. They have a tricky game this upcoming weekend heading to Mississippi State. Just take for a second to realize all the awesome games we have this weekend. I have 2 friends. I have more than 2 friends, but I have 2 friends, very near and dear to my heart. They are going to weddings this weekend. Brother. And it's not even theirs. It's not like I got the invite and I decided not to go. It's my friend's wife has an invite to a wedding. My friend's girlfriend has an invite to a wedding. I'd fake the flu. I'd sit in the bathroom streaming on YouTube TV app. I got to find a way to get out of those weddings. So pouring out for my boys. Feel very bad for them. Can't wait to rub it in all day Saturday. Can't wait to just be sitting there texting up. Oh, you guys are missing out on the best weekend of college football. Sorry. Not sorry. Tennessee up 2 spots to number 8. I've got Miami up a spot to number 7. One of the more impressive teams in the sport this season. Really impressed in the way that they were able to win an ugly game against Florida. Early on in the season, it was like, wow, this really high-powered offense is looking great. Carson Beck was not at his best against Miami, but the run game was really just able to slowly lean on Florida's strong defensive front and make the difference in that game. So Miami up a spot to number 7. And then my top 6 teams have all stayed the same. Texas is still number 6. It was great to see the offense pop off against Sam Houston State. Show me it against Oklahoma. In a couple weeks for me to feel a little bit better about it, but they're still, to me, one of the best defenses in the nation, a lot of talent at the playmaking positions, a really talented and good head coach. So I've never dipped them too far down. Texas at number 6, Alabama at number 5. Again, looked great the last few weeks. This is the true test. Go up against Georgia, show that you deserve to be a top 5 rated team and you can stay there. But if all we have 5 weeks into the season is you losing to FSU, you getting blown out by Georgia and a couple wins against lower, level teams, you're going to get bumped down a little bit further. But for now, they stay at number 5. Oregon, my number 4 team in the country. No one has looked more impressive on a football field if you're just looking at numbers and production. Oregon is great. They're my number 4 team. Ohio State at number 3. God, Ohio State has an awesome game this Saturday heading to Washington. A lot of really fun pieces to talk about. I hope we can fit this into Friday's episode because I really want to discuss that game. But Ohio State, great defense. Offense is, continuing to get better as the weeks go on. Georgia, my number 2 rated team in the country. No one has been maybe more impressive to me this season than Georgia just based on expectations. I believe I had them in the beginning of the season as like my 8th or 9th team. What I've seen from them and their ability to win different styles of games has bumped them up to 2. And Penn State has been my top team in the country this entire season. I believe that they have just been kind of slow playing things for this point of the year. And I think we'll get the Penn State arrival, as I mentioned in that game preview. So that is the updated Week 5 SpringBlake Sweet 16 2.0, if we want to call it that. I wanted to make some changes because obviously, the Mateer injury is a massive one, and I didn't get to the chance to talk about a lot of these teams because last episode was deleted. So that is the Week 5 Sweet 16. Those are our game previews. Those are, me pouring one out for John Mateer. That's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you guys for supporting the show. Still, it's my favorite thing I get to do on a daily basis. And we're still going to get a second episode in Friday. We're going to preview a lot of these secondary games that would be primaries, if not for the doubleheader that we have at 6:30 Central on Saturday. Thank you for the support. Again, the socials at SpringBlake CFB, Twitter and TikTok. Make sure to subscribe to the channels, 5-star reviews, like the videos, anything that you can do to support this show. I greatly appreciate it. I love you, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days. Peace.